Hi.
Your name again?
My name is Kate.
Oh, Kate, yes.
Remember, I'm the second one.
Second.
I'm the third one, I think, actually. So today we have the honor of speaking with this wonderful group of people who are connected to the Florence Belsky Foundation and its important mission. Their North Star is connecting people, sharing ideas, empowering generations to teach each other. And I know that mission resonates with you.
It certainly.
Tell us, how does it resonate?
I feel like I can see all of you. I can't, of course, but I'm very happy to be here with you. I'm sorry, Kate.
Kate. So, you know, mentoring and connecting generations to teach one another. I know that resonates with you. And so talk to us a little bit about why that resonates so deeply with you.
Well, I don't know why this rushes to mind, but each of us, the three of us, Kate, Stephen, and I, and all of you I can't see but are with us, it's taken us all every split second of our lives. Every split second of our lives. It's taken a few more seconds for each of us to hear me finish this sentence. So are we not sharing an amazing moment? It's the first second of the rest of each of our lives. A long way of saying, this is the moment. You know, there are two little words, over and next. We don't pay enough attention to when something is over, and we are on to next. And we are also in the hammock right now, a hammock in the middle of those two words, over and next, living in the moment. And I rejoice in that.
Yes, the over next is a Normanism, and I hope to introduce all of you to several other Normanisms. Well, that's what I call them anyway. You know, words of wisdom and philosophy that I think have helped my father lead a very beautiful, expansive, creative life for 98 years, I might say.
Wow.
You're 98. Did you not know that?
My goodness.
Yeah.
I thought it feels like 58.
Well, you look like 58 to me. Did you have a mentor in your life that you can tell us about?
My mind goes quickly to when I became a writer. There was another writer older than I in my life. We were very good friends. His name was Roland Kibbe. And he was a great friend of Burt Lancaster. And we may have an audience that doesn't know the name Burt Lancaster. He's one of the great stars of cinema, action figure, and a great, great guy. I met him through my friend Roland Kibbe, who I guess was my mentor.
And what kinds of things did he teach you? Was it writing? Was it about life? Was it all the above?
Writing and dealing with success. Not that we ever talked about it, but by living it at close proximity to him. And the guy we were working for was a great entertainer, had his own television show, Tennessee Ernie Ford. And he was a major star, and we had a major show that was my second television show. And I first with Roland, who had to have been the mentor you're asking about.
I've always felt that mentoring is undervalued by a lot. I remember aching when I was in my 20s and 30s to have a mentor. Other than you were always a mentor to me, but having somebody in my work life that was a mentor. You've been in the business for 7 decades. How have you mentored others?
Well, I hear from men and some women. There were, women came into television a lot later than, certainly in the writing capacity, than their brethren. Uh, but the writers I worked with over the years, we were the first doing what we were doing, and I was leading that pack. So they all considered themselves being mentored. Uh, and, it's a long group of names. Most of them, I'm very sorry to say, gone. I mean, they've passed on.
But you've continued to mentor people all through your life.
Well, I'm working, but I want to say this about mentoring because I'm about to mention my current partner, and I suppose because he's so much younger than I am, he considers me his mentor. But mentoring, I believe, is a two-way street. I thought that as you were introducing me to the whole idea of mentoring, and I thought, Kate has mentored me, my daughter, but a very grown woman whose activity as the head of Ballet Hispanic and so forth I've observed closely. And it's hard to believe for me that I, watching her, listening to her, observing her relationships and everything else, don't feel myself mentored. It may not be as palpable as it is with an older man. I'm the grandfather to Kate's sons, and her father and mentor. But that's more palpable. But I believe mentoring cuts in both directions.
Yeah, I have seen you mentor people and be mentored by people, learning from people.
Yes.
You have always, I think one of the keys to your success as a human being and your longevity is that everyone is interesting to you. Everyone. I
Well,
don't think there's been a single person that you've met in your life who you haven't looked directly in their eye and wanting to learn something real.
maybe there's somebody that's listening to us, watching us now, they can look this up, and it might have been Goethe who said, each man is my superior in that I may learn from him. And I was really young when I first heard that. And I never believed anything more. Each man is my superior and that I may learn from it. And may I tell a short story, hopefully a short story, that the first time that had enormous significance for me, I flew combat missions in the war. When the war was over, I volunteered to stay in Europe and ferry men and supplies for a few months, just so I would see more of what I had previously bombed and other places. And one trip took me to Cairo, Egypt. And we were standing at the pyramids. There was a guy that was holding on to two camels, the reins of two camels, and they were there for a GI to get on and take a picture and pay a quarter and so forth. There was a guy taking the fellows I flew and the crew I flew with into the pyramids to hear about how many bricks and slaves it took to build that pyramid. But the guy that was holding the camera spoke a little English and a little Yiddish. And he wasn't Jewish, but he spoke a little of each. And I was fascinated with that. I elected not to go in to the pyramid and take that time to spend with the guy and the camels, because I thought each man is my superior and that I may learn from him. I could read later about the bricks and the mortar and the slaves and so forth. But every time that subject of mentoring comes up, and I think about that, each man, I think about that scene.
That definitely is very evocative and says it all. I think that leads me sort of to my next question. You are probably the most positive, optimistic person I know. I know it's a tough time right now, but in general, you are the most positive and optimistic, despite what you have seen in your life, the depression, flying those 52 missions, Watergate our country as it is today, which is so divisive and so frightening. How did you develop your worldview, and who have been the great influences in your life in terms of the way you look at the world?
I think the greatest gift at birth, it had to have been at birth, was to be born with a sense of humor. With I want to say that more clearly, with some understanding of the foolishness of the human condition. When I was 9 years old, my father was arrested for trying to sell some fake bonds or something. And he went to prison for 3 years. The night or the second night after he was taken away, and I saw cops come up a flight of stairs to take him and handcuff him and leave with him. Having seen all that, and my mother the second night has got a bunch of strangers in the house because we're moving, she's selling the furniture. And a stranger is standing there knowing my situation. And he's talking about buying my father's red leather chair, which was, I don't know how to describe it, was so important to me because my dad and I used to sit in on Friday nights and listen to the fights from Madison Square Garden. And if he could get home in time for Amos and Andy, we sat in the red leather chair together and listened on radio to Amos and Andy and so forth. So it couldn't have been more significant to me. This guy looks at this 9-year-old whose father's chair he thinks he's buying and puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "Well, Norman, you're the man of the house now." Somehow, I understood at that tender age that the guy may not have been a horse's ass all the time, but that was a foolish thing to say to a kid in that situation. Looking at what my face must have looked like and telling me, "Well, now you're the man of the house now." But the gift was that I got that. I always think about that. And I think understanding that in any situation, so long as there was a human being around, there was some foolishness someplace. And nothing has helped me more than that.
I understand that so well, and I think we all connect to that for sure. I wanted to just say, in relation to my father and going back to that point of finding everybody, each man is my superior, and that I may learn from them. He has relationships. I've found this to be very important in my own life. He has relationships with tens of thousands of people. And the reason why he does is because if he sees a play that he likes, he writes the playwright. If he reads an article, he writes the author. He reaches out constantly to learn, and I think that expansive view of the world is also something that is part of your superpower. The way that you are interested, but you work at it. You make those calls, you write those letters, you make those appointments. You have meetings in your office with people that you will never see again, but you know that you'll meet and you'll learn something in the moment. So, and you don't always have to agree with everybody. I'm thinking about your relationship with Nancy Reagan. I mean, you have relationships with people, because we're human beings. But I just wanted to say that. I think it's a wonderful lesson. I wanted to move on to something else. So the foolishness of the human condition, and that moment is a comical moment. It might not have been funny at the time, but it's certainly comical hearing about it now. What do you think the role of laughter has played in your life?
I am convinced, and you've heard me say this over the years, but it's hard to make people understand how much I believe it as much as I believe I am seeing what who I'm talking to. Laughter adds time to one's life. And, starting with that moment that I got it at 9 years of age, I am so convinced that I've had this experience 1,000 times. I always did oh my God, Kate, I did the warm-ups with you for years. I would come out all my shows were live, 4 or 5 cameras, live audience, like a one-act play we were shooting. So I would address the live audience in the warm-up, we called it, before the show. And when Kate was there, starting when she was 4, 5, 6 years old, I used to say, I have a routine I do, but I need some help. Will anybody in the audience? And several people would raise their hand. Among them would be this little girl, and I would say, you. And she'd come out. We do this routine called Three Brothers. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Mr. Lear. Are they all bald? Oh, wait, it doesn't work because they have to set it up.
She would do that, and I would stop her, and I would say, no, Kate, we meet, you say, hello, Mr. Lear. I say, hello, Kate. You ask me, have you got any brothers? I say, yes, I have 3 brothers. Then you ask me, are they all bald? Then I tell the joke. So I've already done that. We come out, she says, hello, Mr. Lear. I say, hello, Kate. She asks me incorrectly, are they all bald? No, Kate. First, you have to ask me, have you got any brothers? Then I say, yes, I have 3. Then you ask me, are they all bald? Okay?
We did that a million times.
Kate, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So Norman, your shows have changed the social landscape. When I was young, All in the Family was a seismic comedy that helped people look at things in a different way. Did you set out to make entertainment that would have that kind of impact on society? And if not, how did you get there, and what kind of resistance did you encounter along the way?
I did not set out to do anything so startling or different or lead the way or not. I was a guy in a young marriage with a child and perhaps the second child coming or third child coming. I had to make a living, and I was working my ass off to do that. I bumped into a guy who wanted to be a writer while I had wished to be a press agent. We wrote something one night, we went out, we sold it that night for like $40. And the $20 I made that night was a third of what I made selling door to door. So that's how it all started for me. But the writing came as a gift, as I indicated earlier. Now I've forgotten what the question was.
How did you go from that, writing bits for comedians to writing and producing shows that shape the social landscape? And was that your intention?
No, it wasn't my intention to shape the landscape. It was my intention to make people laugh. And I guess right from what I knew, from what I had lived, my father was a guy who on a Sunday evening would say, Jeanette, we're going out for Chinks tonight. I would say, Dad, you're going to have a Chinese meal tonight. Why do you have to talk like that? He would yell at me, argue with me, and so forth. There was a piece of Archie Bunker in my life. When I decided when I was writing with Ed Simmons, as I said, and we were writing for nightclub artists and so forth, Danny Thomas's and so forth. And when a friend of mine who wrote for Joan Davis, who was a great comedian, She had an early black and white television show, and he was writing every week. He had a job writing, and that's when I first thought I gotta write. I gotta do a situation comedy, as it was called. And I remembered when I read about a show in Great Britain called "Till Death Us Do Part," about a father and son or a father and son-in-law who were fighting about everything under the sun. I thought about me and my dad, and I didn't have to know any more. But that became All in the Family, and
But I think, Steve, I think that's a really great question because I think it's relevant to art. I don't know. I don't think that anybody. I mean, you might want to think that you're making a masterpiece or whatever piece of writing you're doing or whatever thing you're choreographing or whatever you're doing is going to be a masterpiece. But you write it because it's coming from something you're feeling, experiencing, and want to share with others. And I know that my father used to sit down with his writers in the writers' room and say, you know, so what's going on in your house? What's going on in your neighbor's home down the street? Let's talk about, you know, he talks about this also. Instead of talking about what's for dinner, the boss is coming. Let's talk about the things that are really happening in our homes. And
yeah.
that attitude sort of resulted in, you know, the seismic shift that you talked about. But Dad, you may want to elaborate on that.
Well, but that's it. I mean, let's talk about the things that we know about are happening in our lives. Pay attention to your kids. I would advise the writers and your neighbors and so forth. And let's deal with the real problems. Kate mentioned instead of the roast is ruined and the boss is coming to dinner, how about the father lost his job? You know, what the ends he'll go to keep his wife from knowing until a certain time. And so there's a lot of humor possible there. There's humor in the human condition, whatever the situation. I couldn't believe anything more firmly.
Norman, was All in the Family an overnight success, or did it have some bumps in the road along the way?
No, you asked earlier about, no, it took 3 years to get it on the air. I made it 3 times, word for word, and with the same lead actors. The first 2 times, they were different young people. And it's a blessing that it didn't, you know, and the actors were very good, but they weren't Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner. When that happened, you know, it was a good show made 100% better.
But it was counterculture in a lot of ways that television really didn't delve into. It hit a lot of topics that were really fresh and sensitive. Did you get pushback? And not everyone loved it.
As I say, it took 3 years to get it on the air, and even there was a new head of entertainment at CBS. Robert Wood was his name. I can see the moment right now in his office when he had already said, "We're going on. We're gonna put it on." Now, and I said, not as a one shot, you know, 3 shows, 6 shows, and they made a deal for 6 shows. But in his office, a couple of days before it was to go on the air, he said, "Let's do 1 show and wait a few days." And I said, "I won't be there the next day if you do that." And I drove home, and it wasn't until I got home that I had a phone call that said they would put the 6 shows on.
But even that first night, there was a moment in the first All in the Family that he didn't know if that moment would be in the show. Because
That's right. I forgot that. It's easy to describe the moment. The first story, I wanted to do a simple story, so I had lots of room to introduce the full, what I call 360 degrees of those characters. So They were coming home from church on a Sunday morning, Archie and Edith, and it was their 20th or 25th wedding anniversary. And Mike and Gloria had prepared a brunch, a surprise brunch for them. And they were going upstairs to make love because it was early. She was finished earlier than she thought. As soon as they got to the top of the stairs, the front door opened, and Archie and Edith came in. And they had left the church early because Archie didn't like the pastor. He didn't like the sermon. He did anyway, and he was in a lousy mood. They walked in. Kids came running down the stairs. Archie sees him running down. Mike is buttoning his shirt, and Archie says, 11:30 of a Sunday morning. Network wanted that out. What? 11:30 of a Sunday morning? That has to come out? Yes, because it plants a picture in the audience's mind. What's happening that's such a problem at 11:30 on a Sunday morning? We can't have that picture in the audience's mind at the very top of the show. So that took a good deal of back and forth.
But you know, there's so many examples of that in all of his shows where, you know, where the censors wanted something out. But he really stuck to his guns obviously from the very first day. So what gave you the courage to stick to your guns like that and not fold?
I don't know about courage. I liked what we were doing. You know, when Carol said at 11:30 on a Sunday morning, it was funny. And without a joke. That's not a joke. It's a funny moment. And he expressed something that illuminated the moment in a way that was funny. And yeah, I don't know. I treasure that kind of thing too much to, you know, to give in to the whim of somebody who's just afraid it's, you know, it's going to play the wrong way or something. I don't know what befuddles those minds. Oh, no, I do know. The guy that was saying that to me on the rehearsal floor was reporting to somebody in a building 4 miles away, who was reporting to a guy 6 floors above him, who was reporting to somebody in New York. And I kind of understood that. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even dealing for sure with the person who thought there was a problem with it. It could be, you know, 3,000 miles and 18 floors away.
Steve, do you mind if I get back to another Normanism?
No, please do. I would enjoy that.
So I love this piece of personal philosophy. So the title of his autobiography is "Even This I Get to Experience," and that was from a conversation that he had with my husband John at a time when things weren't going so well. But you know, even this I get to experience is, you know, I'll take it. It's good, it's bad, it's ugly, it's great. I'll take it, and it's a very accepting philosophy. And to go deeper, it's saying go deeper, don't run from things, go towards them and learn from them. So can you talk a little bit about that, how you bring yourself up from a dark time and just move forward? Resilience, perseverance. How do you make that work?
I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It so helps to understand and enjoy the foolishness of the human condition. To have my father going, you know, taken to jail, and understand that a guy who calls me the man of the house under that circumstance, that was such a gift to a 9-year-old. I could understand a 14-year-old better, and a 32-year-old even better. But gift of gifts, I knew it at 9. And I think the answer to your question rests in all of that, an attitude about life. You know, I said something about over and next earlier. You know, that hammock in the middle, appreciating the moment. The fact, as I said again earlier, that it took every split second of Stephen Greer's life to hear me finishing the sentence.
I have to say that Over Next was not was you know, philosophically interesting, but it wasn't so great, you know, in the family because we would be at Christmas vacation and we would just be so happy, and now we all have to leave and go on to our lives and go back home, and it's freezing or whatever, and Dad is over next, and we're all so gosh, if you can incorporate that and really feel it, it really helps to propel you.
The 100, 150, or however many people are listening to this, how did they come to be a part of this?
Through the Florence Belsky Foundation. It's this organization where we have professional advisors and who mentor, who are experts within our industry and share programs and network together and really look after the next generation.
Are they members of a class that comes together every week or every month or something?
There are monthly gatherings and programs throughout the month.
Ms. Belsky knew what she was doing. It's lovely.
Yeah, she did. What about regrets? What do you think about regrets?
I don't believe in it.
Why not?
Because I think it's a waste of time. It isn't that, you know, I would have done something differently. Best way to word it is, I'm enjoying talking to you two so much. I'm having such a good time. Anything and everything that got me to this moment had to be okay. How can I have a moment's regret if I'm living in a moment I love?
Norman, you're going to make me cry.
Well, we haven't seen that. Let's do that.
I appreciate that. You know, a lot of the people watching tonight, joining us, are in the media business. And the media business is especially tough today for a variety of reasons. And I wonder, I think the media business has always been competitive and it's always been a struggle and it's always required perseverance. Do you have any guidance, any advice, anything you can share to help us get through the challenging times?
Well, I'm not sure that it would be different from anything, advice I was asked for 30, 40, 50, oh God, 50 years ago. Go with your gut. The best advice anybody ever gave a writer, George S. Kaufman, was a very famous playwright when I was a kid, was the one word, write. Go with your gut, write with what is haunting you, what is driving you, write it. And I never thought I heard better advice than that to a writer. But I would say to the actor, to the director, to the, you know.
I wanted to just take that a little bit further, because we are living in a time, as we've talked about on any number of occasions, that, and we've all obviously talked about this ad nauseum, that is unlike any other that anybody has seen, including you at 98 years old. So, and it's decimating industries and it's decimating, you know, livelihoods and I hear you, Steve, about this, about the industry, Dad, that you love and know so well. Is there any particular advice about, you know, this moment in time?
Well, first, let me because reflexively I go back to what I said earlier. I don't know that I can say, what doesn't change is you're a writer, write. What you're seeing gives you more food for, it's more to write about, or there's new stuff to write about. I mean, who could have imagined the man who occupies the Oval Office? People alive today will be writing about him in 80 years from now,
Yeah.
and 180 years from now. Any other advice that's more attuned to the moment? I don't know. I think it just I find myself wishing to underline everything I said again and again and again.
I would add something.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I would add that I think that one of the things that has kept him going through a lot of darkness, he's certainly seen a lot of darkness in his life, even since I've known him, is your interest in other things, not just this business. And I think about People for the American Way, where you started an organization 30 years ago that is at the forefront of civil liberties and constitutional rights. He started an organization called the Business Enterprise Trust that gave awards to businesses that acted in an ethical and moral manner and made money at the same time. This was so many years ago. He was so ahead of his time. So do you think...
I just have to interrupt to say those events, those dinners, were not dinners, they were breakfasts. And they were held at 7 o'clock in the morning in one of the great hotels in the Rainbow Room. At 7 o'clock in the morning, a couple of hundred businessmen and the President of the United States. Bill Clinton came, Hillary Clinton came, Barbara Walters. Anyway.
But how important do you think is having other interests, whether they be political or whatever, to maintaining your head in a crazy world?
It couldn't matter more. In my circumstance, it couldn't matter more. But everybody tonight, this is a wonderful time to be saying this. Everybody that's listening to us, watching us at this moment tonight, has probably got an appointment to watch the debate coming up. And that's a piece of what my advice would be. Happening all the time. That's worth your interest. Perhaps not to that degree, but to a degree important enough for you to want to be there, to want to hear it, to want to listen to it, to want to understand it. And that's life-giving.
Norman, can we take some Q&A from our guests? I have a question from Pam. She says she's watched all your wonderful shows as a teenager in the 70s and loved revisiting episodes as an adult, recognizing more clearly issues that matter in marriage, gender roles in our society, how people of different classes and races perceive each other and or relate, and so much more. Is there a new lens you see your shows through with the passing of time?
Well, I can answer that by pointing to a show that's on the air now. It's going to start its 4th season. Was supposed to start last night. It's going to, I think you mentioned it earlier, but they postponed it because of NFL last night. And so it's starting Monday, 9 o'clock on CBS. And it's One Day at a Time, but it's the Latino version of One Day at a Time with Rita Moreno and Justina Machado, and it's a Latin family. and they're delicious. They're wonderful. So I commend that show to you. There, I'm only 98, so of course there are a couple of other shows in the works. And I think you'll be seeing them in this next year.
I look forward to that. Norman, Roy asks, he said, let's recreate your Declaration of Independence tour. What would you want every American to read today or to see today?
Well, I can't think of anything more than the Declaration of Independence. When we were touring that, we covered 50 states, and I visited a number of those states with the Declaration. And I would watch families, husbands and wives with their children, around the block, waiting as long as an hour to get to that document, just to see it in its case there for the 12 seconds that the people behind them would allow. And looking at them sometimes, watching them tear, looking at that document and its meaning. Nothing was more touching to me than that, and I think it would be the same today, perhaps even more given the circumstances of the moment. Kate, you must have visited with me where the Declaration was situated.
Oh, of course, many, many, many times. And I remember when you were going to sell it, when you sold it, because you had it for 10 years and it visited the 50 states. You had done what you wanted to do, and now it was time to sort of move on to other things. We were in LA, and the whole family was there with the Declaration, and we all sort of said our personal goodbyes. I mean, it was such an extraordinary thing to have that document in the family, mostly under his bed, if the truth be known. But
it was really in the house. It was on tour. So.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the house. It was under my bed.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it was an extraordinary experience.
So I have another question. This one is from a fellow Emerson graduate.
Yeah.
He asks, his name is Douglas. He says, what is your greatest failure and what did you learn from it? And how have you let it not haunt you? You don't have to say your greatest failure if you don't want to, but you get the picture.
Well, the failure that comes to mind instantly, because I've never lost the sadness. The funniest human being I ever knew well, actress, professional, the funniest, was an actress by the name of Nancy Walker, comedian. And I can't express how much she meant to me. I don't know how much time we have. Have I got time to tell you this little anecdote?
Please.
The second or third time I ever saw her, she was in an off-Broadway show called Two on the Aisle, I think was the name of it. The scene was she and Harvey Lembeck. God, I'm so happy to remember that name. Mm-hmm. And I remember that name because his son called me yesterday, Michael Lembeck. Harvey Lembeck was sitting at a little kitchen table. It's a small theater. And it was in the morning sitting at a table. There was a show on the air called Person to Person, and the star of that show was a commentator, broadcaster named Edward R. Murrow. Mr. Murrow was interviewing the Mother of the Year. These people had 7 or 8 kids, and they were broke in this little place. They were sitting at this little kitchen table. Harvey Limbeck was playing this kind of ex-truck driver out of work, sitting sloppily, cigarettes in his t-shirt arm. And Nancy Walker was the most, maybe they had 12 kids, I don't know, enough for this woman to be sitting at her table, the most exhausted human being in the history of humanity. That's how glorious she was. And Edward Albro is saying, well, thank you very much. It was a lovely interview. Thank you, Mother of the Year. And he disappears. And now the two of them are just sitting at the kitchen table. The mother of 12 or 14 or whatever. And he, Harvey Limbeck, suddenly looks at her. They don't really change their expression. She looks at him and she knows what his look means. And she gets up and she backs up. And there are two stairs there that go up here. Ostensibly, there's a staircase. And she's trying to get away from him. I don't know if I've expressed it well, but in my lexicon of funny moments, nothing was ever funnier to me than to walk him away from the lust of this guy, her husband. And I mean, that's as funny a moment as I could. Is that the question you asked me, Stephen? Is to tell you the funniest moment I can remember?
Oh, your colleague wanted to hear how you handled one of your failures. How did you rebound from that?
Yes, it's a better story. So having lived through what I just described and adored this woman for so many years, I suddenly find myself with a television show, a review, where I can do a couple of sketches and songs and so forth. And Nancy Walker is in LA and available. And I book her on the show. And whatever I did, it wasn't good enough. And it is the single biggest, when anybody asks me about a regret or anything that resembles a regret, it's the first thing that rushes to mind. How terribly disappointed I was in what I put together for the greatest comedic talent I could remember.
And you never had a second chance.
It just never developed. I mean, I know that I tried, but it just never developed. And she passed not long thereafter.
This is a question that I think you could probably answer best if you're willing to answer it. And this comes from David. Who would Archie Bunker vote for in 3 weeks, and why?
It's a good question.
You know, I think, given what I know about the guys that worked with me, and certainly where I come from, we would have found a story that saw him changing his mind or doing the unimaginable for him, and that is voting for the other guy. We'd have to have found a way. I couldn't sit here at this moment and think for a second, under these circumstances, I could ever have seen an Archie. I could ever have been responsible for an Archie voting for him.
How would you think Archie, this is from Joe, how would you write Archie Bunker's reaction to today's reality of politics and racial inequality reawakening?
I think it would take place in the story that we would have to write that sees him not voting but grappling with it. I mean, it would open with his absolutely, and it might be a double, it might be two shows, but absolutely he's going to vote for Archie and for Trump. And then the show would be about everything that happens and takes place, transpires, that causes him to change his mind.
Give us reason to be hopeful about our future, about the election, about the Supreme Court, about our future. You've seen pretty much everything. So give us
wherever we are, wherever you are, we're all going to go to bed tonight. And I wish you a good night's sleep. Chances are you'll have one. And you'll wake up to a brand new day and brand new possibilities. I, for myself, don't want to wake up the morning I'm without hope. So I go to bed hopeful of a better day. And if it turns out not to have been, there is another night and another sleep and another wake up and another day. But this too shall pass.
I'm counting on you, Norman.
If you're counting on me, you're counting on tomorrow.
Let's count on tomorrow. But for tonight, Norman, thank you so much for joining us in this timely and wonderful conversation. Really grateful to share your wisdom with this wonderful organization, our friends and colleagues. So thank you.
I couldn't have enjoyed it more. Thank you, Rivka. Thank you, Kate Lear. I know you so well, love you so much.
Thank you. I know that I've been sitting here for the past hour smiling ear to ear, and that has been such a beautiful sensation to all of you. That was such an enjoyable conversation. I have no doubt everyone feels the same way. So thank you so, so much.
Well, welcome.
Kate, please, Norman. Kate, thank you so much for helping us to organize this. We're grateful for your contribution, and thank you to the Florence Belsky Foundation, and Rivka, thank you so much for coordinating this.